Hi, Ridhi. Thank you so much for taking our time to interview with us. And we would love to know more about you first.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Dikshita and the entire team for having me here today. It is an absolute pleasure to be, interacting with you, and hopefully, with this session, we can impact, a lot more candidates, who'd be interested in applying to ESA. Just to give you a quick introduction to myself, my name is Ridhi Ghelani. I am the Associate Director of Admissions. I take care of recruitment from all of India and South Asia. Something interesting about us at admissions at ESA is that about 90% of the team is actually the alumni of the institution and the MBA program ourselves. So I graduated from the ESE MBA back in 2017. Almost a decade ago was when I was entering into ESA. So I do hope I can bring the wisdom of 8 years since graduation, of course my time as a student, and now of course as the admissions director for, the institution. And a little bit about myself, I came back to my family business, Dikshita, post the MBA, which was in the beauty sector. A couple of years of working, my family business, I was tinkering with, this idea and passion to explore the education space. Got an opportunity to do so with, a couple of friends and peers, which turned into, and something which I wanted to do long term, which was education consulting. Just when I thought that was long term, ESA came to me with this beautiful opportunity to lead admissions. And I think the whole vision was to also develop our base in India and South Asia. Given that, of course, the Indian market today is one that, we can't ignore. We are the growth story of the world. And, we have top talent that, ESA would love to recruit. And I think where they can add a lot more value, to the table. To give you an example, when I was at ESA, back in 2016, I think the Indian community was about like less than 5% of the class. And today we're anywhere between 12, to 13%, of the entire cohort. So that's the mind shift, that's happened, with ESA as an institution now focusing on India as a market. So that's a little bit about me and a little introduction to ESA's focus on India.
Oh, this is awesome. And thank you for your brief introduction. I'm so sure that your learnings, your experience, and your guidance is going to go a long way for the audience watching this interview. So, what would you like to tell the audience about the history and the legacy of your coveted MBA program?
Of course. I think, Dikshita, here I'd like to sort of take a note of, the Financial Times ranking that, ESA has been witnessing over the last, couple of years, which have been very, very favorable. And I would like to use this as a stepping stone into, answering your question. I think as we all know that in the last about 2 to 3 years, ESA has been ranking consistently amongst the top five, global MBA programs. And I think a big credit to that goes to key pillars, one of them being, focus on sustainability. Right. I think ESA was a pioneering, institution developing sustainability as part of the academic curriculum, bringing it to the table with, running Europe's largest student-led, responsible business and student-led conference called the Doing Good, Doing Well conference, right? And of course, I think three, even having career focus in roles which are sustainable first, right? And I think the second pillar that contributes to ESA's legacy and hence, the rankings has also been our undying sort of focus on diversity, right? If you look at any class structure across the years, you find that no nationality is represented more than 15% of the class, right? Which means you have 45 plus nationalities on campus every year. You have every team comprised of people from different professional, academic, regional, cultural backgrounds. And I think this sort of adds so much to the peer-to-peer learning advantage, that ESA brings. And I think the third pillar I would say is ESA's focus on having an environment which is student first, right? And then I think, I guess the year on year when we, run surveys, ESA graduates always are extremely high ranking when it comes to, the happiness quotient, the satisfaction quotient, from the MBA program. So I would say this is really what the value of ESA is, which is, responsible business, creating leaders which drive high impact. And I think most importantly, having a people first approach, whether at school and even beyond once, you graduate from the program.
Wow. Thank you for highlighting the key strengths of the MBA program. So, as you were saying that the focus is on students first, what would
Yes.
you like to tell the potential applicants about the teaching methodology at your esteemed B school?
Yeah, great question, Adikshita. And I think it can tie down beautifully to, one aspect that I was just talking about, which was
Hmm.
diversity, right? And why is diversity so important and coveted to us as an institution? And I
Hmm.
think it comes down to our teaching methodology, which is a case-based method, right? Now, what is this case-based method? How does it work? What does it entail? So it is really about looking at that one business problem, from a 360 lens, right? And this
Hmm.
is where when you have, people from different cultural, academic, professional backgrounds, all solving that one business case, your learnings are tenfold, right? Because let's assume you're talking about a case, of say a Spotify or a Netflix, right?
Right.
Looking at growing in a new market, right? And how would that work? What sort of strategy should they deploy? What kind of data do they need to analyze, right? Now, this is one business case under one subject that, you're studying in a day.
Hmm.
Multiply this to 3 times a day, and I think over 350 times, across your MBA program, right? So the whole idea is that you get a case, Dakshita, you study it at an individual level, get your analysis, and then you come together to something called a learning team, right? This learning team is given to you on day one, and it sticks with you for the entirety of the first year. You
Hmm.
discuss this with your learning team, which is about 8 or 9 of you. So you've already grown your analysis from a single to, like 8 different or 9 different perspectives.
Yeah.
Now the third year is that you take this to a classroom of 70 peers,
Right.
right? And a professor leading this discussion.
Wow.
And then that's where the learning truly unfolds, right? And I think the beauty of this is that there's never a wrong answer and there's never an absolute right answer, right? There
Correct.
can be multiple ways in which this business problem can be solved. Of course, the idea is that the professor is leading you to what is the best or the easiest or the fastest or the cheapest, depending on what the requirement of the case is, right?
Right. Right.
Um, actually what the academic structure at ESA looks like. You're
Hmm.
never going to sit into a classroom and have a professor just have a monologue
Yeah.
of a lecture and, walk out of the classroom with like copious notes written. I think
Hmm.
it's always a dynamic,
Right.
a very engaging session, sometimes also very heated session because, you have opposing views and
Yes.
challenges that happen to, certain suggestions. But I think that's
Mhm.
what the ESA classroom is all about.
Wow. So, the campus life, it's not just inside the classroom. It's also a lot about outside the classroom and doing a lot of case studies, which is very interesting. So, while coming to the academics part of it, what are the main discipline areas or industry areas in which the MBA program is particularly strong?
Of course. I think, while we are a general management MBA program, Dikshita, which is that in the first year, your
Hmm.
curriculum is very structured, right? Which means that all of you would be doing the 24 core courses from
Hmm.
marketing to, PR to cost accounting, financial accounting to, capital markets, strategy, ethics, leadership, the works, right? I think everything that would
Yeah.
probably be under the business
Uh-huh.
arena, is
Right.
something that you have access to and you'd study in year one. Now,
Hmm.
when you come to year two, this is where actually the entire game changes. And this is where, to answer your question, you
Yeah.
have focus areas, right? So
Right.
we have 5 concentrations available. You have data analytics, you have
Hmm.
entrepreneurship, international business, finance, and you have sustainability and responsible business, right?
Right.
Now, again, this is an elective. It's
Hmm.
not a compulsion, right? Which means that, I may decide to do a concentration and which means that I need to complete a certain number of credits under each concentration so that I can graduate with a focus in, say, finance or a focus in data or a focus in, entrepreneurship, for example, right? Or I can choose to do and we have about 130 odd electives, right? So you can choose a combination of electives and still just have a general management approach, right? And I think the reason why we have this is because not everyone wants to develop a niche, but at the same time, we also want students to have an opportunity to develop, a specialization if they decide or choose to do so, right? So this is how I would say the academic curriculum is sort of developed, we do want students to walk away with a very 360 and holistic understanding of business management.
Okay. So, like you were saying that, there are five main discipline areas, and also that the college, the B school focuses on diversity. So, if you could just throw some light on your selection process and, what are a few broad qualities or accomplishments that you look for in the candidates?
Of course, of course. And I think, I do like to sort of bifurcate this across like, three spectrums so that, it's also probably easier for our candidates to, identify a match, right? And I think the
Mm-hmm.
number one would be an academic fit, right? So when I say an academic fit, A is, of course, do you want to be in an environment where you're actually learning the practical approach, to solving business problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you prefer to be in an environment where you're just observing and absorbing like, a lot of content? Very different styles, neither are wrong, neither are right, but it depends on what your preference is, right? So I think aligning with the kind of academic curriculum and academic structure you see yourself
Mm-hmm.
in, right? Secondly, even within the whole academic fit, Dikshita, like I mentioned to you, in your year one, you have a learning team that's assigned
Mm-hmm.
to you, right? Which means that whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
whether today, tomorrow, or day after, you are stuck with this learning team for the first year, right?
Right.
Now, I had a beautiful learning team. We were 8 of us from 7 different nationalities. We were like a tight unit. We did like, team bonding activities more than what was, asked of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think but they also became my space to sometimes take a step back, sometimes, put in more effort, depending on what your priorities were in certain times of the year, right?
Okay.
So also, are you someone who loves and thrives in a team setting and a
Right.
team environment? Because you're constantly going to be in one at ESA, right? Then I think from an academic fit standpoint, you would make a good sort of, potential candidate for ESA, right? And how
Mm-hmm.
can you showcase this? It is through, your resume, through your experiences, through your essays where you talk about your affinity to work with people, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
adaptability to be in a different environment, working with different people, priorities, timings, language barriers, so on and so forth, right? The second pillar is a career fit. And I think this is, to me, a very, very important criteria, especially for, international passport holders, because we all know that, it's the hardest for them, to
Indeed.
get recruitment opportunities in terms of visa sponsorships, right?
Yeah.
So when I do career fit, of course, if you just simply go ahead and download the employment report, you'll have all the stats. But maybe I can actually, we'll come to probably, those slides a little bit later. But, a career fit is something that I'm looking for in terms of identifying what are key areas that ESA has been successful in supporting students go into, right? So say
Mm-hmm.
consulting, say finance, tech, diversified industries like healthcare, like operations, like automotive. We have sort of historically seen that ESA graduates have been able to successfully recruit into these roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when a candidate is applying to ESA, I'm trying to evaluate A, what is their career goal, and B, what have they done which can sort of complement this transition, right? Of
Okay.
course, I'm sure there are missing links and missing blocks which ESA can supplement, or complement for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
But you an adverse example, say if someone is looking at a policy role, right, with
Right.
a UNICEF or a just a very hardcore social impact role with a Dalberg or an FSG as an
Mm-hmm.
international passport holder, they're
Yeah.
going to find it really hard to get such placements, right? Which makes it harder for us at the admissions to be convinced of their career fit with ESA,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would say career fit is the second aspect. And the third aspect, or the third pillar rather, is the cultural fit, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think this comes with what ESA is all about. I think anytime you walk onto an ESA campus, you will see that people are constantly sitting together, working together, having coffee together.
Right.
You walk into a team meeting and be like, look, I tried, but I just don't know how to run a regression, right? I have never sort of, created an X type of slide before, and I don't think you're ever going to be met with surprise or
Mm-hmm.
sort of, a negative thought or a negative reaction to it. It's going to be like, you know what, let's sit down, let's do it together. Like I have seen peers going for the same McKinsey interview or a Bain interview, doing mocks together
Yeah.
and preparing together, knowing that they're competing for the same spot, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that's the one. value system and the culture that ESA has. And I think that's exactly what we look for in candidates in terms of the cultural fit. So it's an academic, career, culture.
Right. Wow. So the entire selection process is quite wholesome, and it's quite interesting to know how you focus on the three most important aspects that are
Yeah.
required in such an environment. So,
Yeah.
coming to the value of the work experience, how much does ESA value work experience, and is the school open to those with 10 plus years of work experience? And according to you, what are those qualities that such applicants should
Mhm.
focus on demonstrating in their application essays?
Mhm. No, of course. Number one, I think,
Mhm.
your work experience can have volumes to speak about, your
Yeah.
skill sets, your abilities, like I mentioned, transferable skill set, right?
Right.
Typically, Dakshita, we've seen that ESA, and again, from the Indian cohort, right? I'm focusing a lot of my answers to the Indian, subcontinent or the Indian market because I
Mhm.
assume that's the market, both of us are catering to.
Right.
We've seen that the work experience is anywhere between about a 4 to 8 years, right? That's typically the profiles that have been recruited to in the ESE MBA program, because we feel that with about a 4 years of experience, you are in a good position and place to start, your MBA. But similarly, even someone with a 7 or 8 years and potentially leadership positions, having had experience in say, maybe more than two organizations can also add value in terms of, diversity that they bring to the table, right?
Mhm.
Now, when it comes to answering your question about someone with 10 plus years of work experience, I would say it's not a common practice, but it's not a no-go either, right? Which means that of course, every year we do have, but that's potentially about 4 or 5% of the overall Indian cohort that goes in, which has 10 plus years of work experience. And I think with them, it's going to be interesting for me to understand that why is it that they delayed, their MBA plan for a decade? B, do they already have a current master's or an MBA, which could have been a potential reason, for the delay? And C, how does a resume grow or build in terms of certain senior leadership roles, right? And I think here it will also become critical for them to talk about where they see themselves post the MBA, because again, a lot of the structured recruiting that happens at ESA post the MBA are in specific roles, right? So whether it's consulting or banking or tech, every MBA graduate, whether from ESA or other business schools,
Mhm.
always start at one level.
Right.
Very rarely will you see the structured roles being skewed across levels or verticals in an organization, which
Correct.
means that someone with 10 plus years, a company or a firm might feel that they're too senior to start at this level, right? So even though they are okay to make this jump and transition,
Mhm.
it might become a challenge for companies to understand that. So I think it also becomes imperative for these candidates to address some of these in the optional essay that we offer, saying that, okay, how is it that they plan to, leverage or utilize resources at ESA to get to, their end goal? So I would say this is how you would look at someone who has 10 plus years of work experience as well.
All right. So while 10 plus years of work experience seems a good option, is the school also open to applicants who already hold a prior management degree or an MBA? And if yes, is there something specific that such applicants should focus on their application essays?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, in India, I do understand that a lot of candidates
Mm-hmm.
tend to pursue a master's and MBA right after college, right? And I think a lot of these profiles, again, if I'm not mistaken, are technical profiles wanting to go into business roles, right?
Correct.
Or like STEM education now wanting to pivot to business roles. So I think we definitely don't look at it negatively. But of course, it would then mean that we expect the candidate to talk a little bit about what is it they gained from their first masters or an MBA, how has that supported their career journey, and what is missing, because of course there has to be
Right.
something missing for them to want to do this again.
Correct.
Highlighting what is still missing
Yeah.
that they believe the SA MBA will be able to support them with. So I
Mm-hmm.
think if they're able to use the optional essay to highlight some of these facts,
Okay.
I don't think it's a challenge, or we definitely don't look at it negatively for sure.
Right. All right. Okay. Okay. So, while we are talking about the entire selection process and the candidates, applicants are often curious about waivers for GMAT or GRE. So, if you
Yeah.
can throw some light on this matter and, let us know under what circumstances would you recommend the applicants to apply without a score on these standardized exams?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I wish I had a positive answer to this, but as protocol, Dikshita, at ESA, we do not offer GMAT or GRE waivers.
Mhm.
It is an absolute essential and compulsory element of your application.
Right.
But let me put it this way, right? You do have some options over here. Number one is that let's assume you're targeting round one. As you get closer to round one, you're busy preparing for the application, getting your insights, doing your networking, you realize that you do have a score which you're not the happiest with, but it's too close to the deadline for you to appear and rather prepare and appear for a new, for the exam again, right? This is where I would say go ahead and submit your application with your current score. Right. We give you up to 3 to 4 weeks post the deadline to actually submit a revised score. And we will consider that even in the first shortlist of interviews that we do, for candidates, right? So let's assume, like I said, round one, your deadline date is 25th September.
Mhm.
You will probably have up until 15th of October, to submit a revised score, right? So I would rather encourage candidates that, do not apply just because you think you have an average score, because you do have an opportunity to supplement your application with a revised score later, right? Maybe and 3 weeks post your deadline, you're sort of free of the stress and the anxiety of it all, and then you have time to dedicate to your exam and potentially reappear for it. What Indian candidates are exempt of is the English test, right? They do not need to give the English test if
Yeah.
they can prove, and then I think which is true in most cases, that their undergrad was delivered in English, right? And I think the second element, and I know why you are probably asking me this question, is because, you're potentially bombarded with, this question a lot, that, what is the average GMAT, GRE score that, ESA has? And if I'm below the average means I shouldn't apply at all. They're going to reject me just because I have like a low GMAT or a GRE score. And I want to tell you here that we do not have any such filters, especially us at ESA do not use filters for the standardized tests to evaluate whether this candidate should move forward or not. It has a role to play in your overall, admit process, but it is just one part of your profile and we treat it that way, right? Which goes to say that I've admitted candidates even with like a 580 or a 600 on the GMAT, and at the same time I've sort of sent an admit letter to someone with a 750 on the GMAT, right? It doesn't mean that you have a 750 and it's an automatic yes, and doesn't mean if you're a 600 it's an automatic no. I'm sure there are so many elements to your profile that can, bring about, these characteristics of critical reasoning, strong quant skills, ability to, work under pressure, ability to sort of, solve like, critical problems. And I think if you feel that you are on the lower end of the spectrum, I would, go back and relook at my resume and think about how can I strengthen that to showcase some of these key skills that we typically look for from these standardized tests. Right. And here I would also then use the optional essay again to just
Mhm.
highlight that maybe you feel that your GMAT or your GRE score is not a true representation of, your academic prowess, for example.
Right.
And there are three ways in which I can highlight that, right? I have my GPA from my undergrad is XY. I have taken, ABC courses, which show that I have these skill sets. My resume will also highlight further, that I use these particular tools, at work on a day-to-day basis, which showcase strong quant skill set, right? So I think these are some ways in which you can navigate or mitigate such, standardized test risks, when you're thinking about applying to ESA.
All right. It's
Yeah.
interesting how the entire profile evaluation is done, and the focus area is just not on one part of it, like the standardized
Yeah.
exam scores. So that's
Exactly.
that's great. So, coming to the placements and the potential recruiters, applicants are always very curious to know about this. So, we request you to share some details about the industry wise placement statistics or the companies that recruit regularly from the institute, or anything else that you would like to share with the audience about the placements at ESA.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I'd like to give a quick one line before, I can request you to share some data points that I have shared with you. At, ASA Dikshita, the way in which the entire recruitment functions is through a very holistic 360 view, right? Of course, you have your career development center. And the reason why we call ourselves a career development center is because we're not a placement cell. I know which a lot of us in India are used to. The Career Development Center is created to actually support understanding of different sectors, industries, roles that are available, helping you develop your resume, your profile, prepare yourself for mocks to be able to crack these roles post the MBA, and three, of course, giving you access to these companies and recruiters, right? So within the CDC, you have a consulting lead, a finance lead, a tech lead, somebody who leads diversified industries, which is your healthcare, your automotive, your operations, your marketing roles per se. And then you have something called the career forums, which happen twice a year. So this is where the CDC has a big role to play, where they bring in, about 150 odd companies, across the two, career fairs to do presentations on what kind of roles, what kind of locations, what kind of profiles are they looking for, right? They also give you the opportunity to network with these recruiters, right? And to understand, develop a rapport with them, a connect with them, right? And the third element is the clubs, right? So now these are student-led clubs. So in fact, some of the largest on campus are the consulting club, the finance club, the club, you have the healthcare club, you have the PEVC club, you have the retail marketing club. I think there's a club for every particular function or sector at large. But the idea is that through these clubs, you have access to second year students and mentors, who have either done their internships in these roles, have gone through a year of prep, so they have an understanding of what to expect, what's the market like, da da da. And B, they also host something called treks, right? Now, before I get to the treks, if I can just request you to share, the slides that I have shared with you, so that I
Sure.
can give a more visual representation to our audience here.
Sure, sure. Let me just share my screen with you.
Thank you, Dikshita, for sharing the screen. And I think this is exactly the visual representation that I wanted to, show all our candidates here. So I think if you can see, which sectors, ESA has recruited in successfully over the last couple of years. This is, of course, for the class of 2024. But I can tell you that even class of 23 and 22, the numbers are pretty similar, where about more than 40% of the class, has recruited in consulting, right? Which means that, ESA does well when it comes to supporting student careers into recruiting, recruiting into consulting post the MBA. Right. Number two is your diversified industries. And this is, of course, combination of your marketing, healthcare, rotational development programs, operations roles, automotive, multiple combination of, working in startups, for example, and corporate strategy roles. So this is all would come under diversified industries. You have, of course, financial services, which is banking, corporate banking, investment banking, your financial management. You have corporate finance, you have corporate finance and strategy roles across, different sectors and industries. And then, of course, you have tech, which is, at a 12%. Unfortunately, this number was very different in COVID at times, when the tech industry was booming. But alas, in the last 2 years, we've seen, quite a dip in tech recruiting, because we've all read about, the massive layoffs that, these organizations have had, unfortunately. But still, there is tech. Now, when I say tech, you have, of course, big techs like your Amazons and Metas and Googles of the world coming in, but you also have a lot of, tech startups, right? You have a lot of tech first roles, even within, the corporate sector, which are very open to now having candidates who have that kind of, understanding, knowledge, passion for AI, for data analytics, for, leveraging, tools to develop, certain codes and models, for these companies, right? Now, when I was telling you about the career treks that happen, under student clubs, as you can see, like that's literally like all over the globe right now.
Right.
treks which are essentially led by the student clubs. And this is, so let's assume you're going for a consulting trek to the Middle East, right?
Mhm.
Now, the consulting trek in the Middle East would be where you would go as a group of 25 or 30 candidates. So again, a very niche group going to meet about 10 different, consulting companies, in Dubai, in Riyadh, in an Abu Dhabi for that matter, meeting with the recruiters, meeting with alumni, for coffee chats, fireside chats, and then having an opportunity to actually be in the office and the headquarters, right? Now, this happens across multiple sectors, as you can see, from this slide. And I
Right.
think an interesting part that I know a lot of Indian students might have is that, we'd like to geographically relocate to locations, right? And
Mhm.
if you go to, the next slide, I'll answer
Sure.
that in a bit.
Yeah.
The career fair that I was telling you about, or the career forum, and so
Right.
these are the type of companies that you would typically see visiting campus, doing company presentations. So of course the fall career forum is more focused on consulting and your banking and your healthcare, and then of course your winter career forum is more focused on startups, on retail, on FMCG, on insurance, and a lot of, I would say, corporate finance roles, right? And then if we just move to the third slide, I think this is going to be the most relevant one for our audience here. Now, these are companies, Akshita, and locations where Indian graduates have placed over the last 5 years, right? So this is absolute current data
Right.
of where Indian students from ESA are currently in, right? As you can see that the quantum in Spain is minimal, right? And then I
Correct.
think this is, I think, a question or a challenge that we get a lot, that if I go to study at ESA, it's a
Mhm.
Spanish school, uh, I will be so restricted to, look for jobs in Spain, right? And I think this is where, or this is actually where the answer lies, that actually Spain is not your target market. You will not be recruiting in Spain unless, you're thinking about startups, right? Both Outthink and Cita startups are tech startups, right?
Right.
Um, to work in Spain, you need to have business level Spanish proficiency, right?
All right.
And yeah, and which is why, and only 15% of your class is Spanish, so ESA as an institution can't afford to have companies coming with just roles in Spain, which means that when all of the companies that you saw on the previous slide come to campus,
Mhm.
they are looking at recruiting you across offices in UK, Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia as well, right?
Right.
So as an Indian or a passport holder or a native English speaker, locations like the UK, like Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, Luxembourg, Belgium in Europe, you have, of course, your Dubai, Riyadh, your, Abu Dhabi in the Middle East, these are your most coveted, right? And over the last 2 years, we've also seen, ESA graduates come back to India, to consulting roles like BCG, like Accenture, the big fours, coming to like VC roles, post
Mhm.
the MBA, venture capital roles, coming to, media giants like Netflix in India as well, right?
Right.
So there is, an influx back in the home country as well, because candidates sometimes feel that, the growth story is here. They sometimes feel that, coming back closer to home, and family requirements are such that, they prefer to be, closer to the home country. And all of these companies are, giving you, great sort of salary packages, which make the ROI worth it, right? So I would say this is pretty much what the recruitment landscape at ESA looks like.
All right. Okay. That was quite insightful. Thank you so much for sharing those slides with us. I'm sure it's going to give a lot of information and the statistics that the audience actually needs. So this is great.
Amazing. I'm glad. And I think, which is why I thought, a visual
Mhm.
representation would be much easier for them to absorb all the different, aspects of career recruitment, because I do understand that it's a large part of consideration, when a candidate is looking to invest so much of their time, their effort, of course, it comes at a massive financial cost as well, right? So it's important for them to understand the ROI or the benefits of coming to ESA.
Absolutely. So, coming to the applicants' mistakes, according to you, what are a few common mistakes that most of them, commit in their applications? And, what would you advise to the potential candidates regarding that?
Yeah. I think, I would say well, again, not a mistake, but something that candidates miss out on, when putting down their ESE application is the detail or the absolute, driven insights that help them stand out from someone who is just sort of rehashing a goals essay and then putting it down in the ESE MBA application.
Mhm.
If I were to just give you an example here, uh, I think as someone who's been in this program and of course in this role now for the last 4 years, it's very easy for us to identify if someone's done, just read the first 2 pages of the ESA website, or someone's actually invested in meeting us at admissions, meeting the current students, the alumni, actually getting insights on why the ESA MBA across, the academic career and cultural fit, pillars suits them best, right? And I think to me, when I read an application which would just potentially say, oh, I'm interested in going into consulting, and I want to go to ESA because the case method is fantastic. I want to take the strategic management course, ESA has to offer. And I have, kind of seen that ESA has a pretty good consulting club, right? And I'm interested in joining it, right? That's one kind of essay. And there's another kind of essay or a candidate, which has a layer of insight, which is over the last 3 years, consistently as per the employment report, ESA has been, sending students into consulting roles. That's like 40% of the class going into consulting. I am absolutely driven to kind of go into a consulting role because in my current role, I had an opportunity to work with a team of consultants from an ex-company. I saw the value that they brought to the table and the insight and the tools, that they were using, and that excited me a lot. And which is why consulting is something that I truly aspire to go into. Why ESA?
Mhm.
The fact that I've only been in a lecture-based, methodology of teaching versus, what an ESA student told me was that, in the first year itself, they did about 140 odd cases. To me, learning about 140 odd business problems already makes me a pseudo consultant. The fact that ESA has multiple simulations, as part of the academic curriculum, which gives me an opportunity to actually step into the shoes of a CXO and try to solve that business problem with, multiple challenges thrown my way in real time, is preparing me, to be a future consultant, right? The fact that consulting club at ESA is, unique to hosting, consulting treks with across 3 different locations, gives me an opportunity to learn about what consulting requirements are across, like a Dubai, a London and a Berlin, right?
Mhm.
You see the difference?
Yeah.
Diksha, and the two essays, you see the
Right.
effort the two candidates have put in. So it would be a
Correct.
no-brainer for me to go with the candidate B,
Mhm.
because I believe that they have invested so much and also they have a clear action plan, right? Like I know that this candidate once on campus is going to start activating all of these channels to, achieve the goal of going into consulting probably post the MBA, right? Which is convincing enough for us at admissions to want to, take this candidate forward in the admissions process. So I would say it's the missing insights, right? If you are spending time learning more about the program, the more you spend time learning about the program from students, alumni, asset admissions, I can guarantee that your career vision will also start becoming more sharper, right? And then that automatically, will be sort of a huge stepping stone into getting your essays done in the right manner. So I would say this would be my take on a good application versus an average application.
Okay. I mean, that's great insight, application analysis process that's followed. So, how has the advent of artificial intelligence affected the application assessment process? Like, what is your advice to the applicants regarding the usage of AI in their applications?
this is this has been I think that the bane of our existence at admissions right now, and but on the other hand, I think it would be foolish for candidates to not leverage AI, right?
Mhm.
I think it would be foolish on our part as admissions to believe that candidates are not using AI, right? It's a part of life now today. I think even when someone drafts a WhatsApp, they're now using, different tools of AI to, craft a better message, let alone an entire college application or a B school application for that matter. matter. But I think what happens to us at admissions, or how we have tackled this, is that if you look at the ESA application, you'll see that over the last 2 years, we have reduced, dependency on written essays, and we have moved to video essays, right? And this is how I think we actually get to meet the candidates in a more authentic style, and actually, understand who they are, what's their personality like, what's their behavioral characteristics like, what is their communication style, how well do they think on the spot, right? How well are they able to articulate a thought in a short span of time and deliver it, right? So this is all what the video essay gives us, which sometimes a written application or a written essay cannot, right? Because
Correct.
someone can have a beautifully crafted resume and a written essay, but I think the true sort of, test lies in their ability to bring all of this even in a video format where they are expected to sort of talk on the fly,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think this is how I think we as a school have taken our step forward in sort of mitigating the risk of AI that can sometimes have a negative impact on how a profile is viewed, but at the same time, giving both us and the student a chance to actually put their true self forward.
Right. It's so true. In the written essays, it is so possible that, it's written by the AI and that authenticity is not there, which is there in the video essays. And that's a great step that ESA has taken to get away from the AI software usage.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, what would be your final advice or message for all the potential applicants to your school watching this video?
Yeah, thank you, for asking me this question. And I would say, I think it's really about understanding what you want to take away from an MBA program, right? Whether it's ESA or any other MBA program that you apply to, please be clear on the kind of environment, you see yourself in, the kind of academic curriculum, that you'd like to be a part of and take, away from. And I think most importantly, a program that can also help you and benefit your professional growth, right? So I think it's one thing to just apply to a school, and the other is to really understand your fitment across the, multiple aspects of the program. And I think, I would love to see all your applications coming into, ESA. And I think the one piece of advice I would give you is that take the time to learn more about the school, because like I mentioned much earlier, in this video, that ESA, one of the strongest pillars of ESA or value system at ESA is the people at the center, and this is something that we take very, very seriously. And we want candidates who are able to add value to the community. And you can do that when you're interested in wanting to be part of the community, and when you're interested in wanting to learn from each other. ESA is an extremely heavy peer-to-peer engagement and peer-to-peer learning environment. So I think the more time you spend learning about in the program, it will immediately and directly reflect in your application and even your entire admissions process. And this is what's going to help you stand out from 100 other applicants, who are potentially applying with you and competing, to get into the ESE MBA program. And yeah, I would wish you all the best. I can tell you that it's going to be the most transformational 2 years, of your life. And if you're ready for, a crazy time in Barcelona, then, ESA is the best place for you to do that. So.
Wow. Thank you so much, Riddhi. This has been quite an insightful and interesting session, and it's going to help a lot of students in their journey to their applications and admission process for ESA. And thanks a lot for taking our time to help all the students with this.
Of course, very happy to. And thank you again, Nikshita, for a very, very engaging conversation. I think you had some fantastic questions coming my way. And I do hope that, I was able to to do justice to them and to give out a lot of insight and information that can help, students apply to ASA in the future. And thank you again for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good
Have a
day
great
ahead.
day. Bye.